Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Healing and Freedom Journey. I am your brother from another mother, Mark DeJesus, bringing you insights to help you along your healing and freedom journey, especially when it comes to mental, emotional, and relationship health. Today, I'm going to get into another stage of talking about the issue of narcissism. I've been doing a bunch of episodes on the subject. I've done some biblical deep dives on it. You can check out those episodes. And where I'm at now is, how do you heal? How do you heal when you've been under the influence of someone? You've been in a relationship with someone, and the true narcissistic ways are having an effect on the relationship, and they will, and they have an effect on you. And now that you're walking through healing and you're recognizing some areas that need to be worked on, what does that look like? And so I'm looking at some of the effects. And one of the effects that we need to heal from is this issue called grandiosity. So today I want to talk about healing from a relationship with a narcissist and overcoming grandiosity, the influence of narcissism partners with a mindset of grandiosity, an extreme pattern of a self-importance kind of mindset. Or we could even use, in quotes, a specialness the person carries that often leads to exaggerated boasting about their accomplishments, their status, or their image. Now, as Christians, we all need to heal and grow, right? And we need to heal and grow in understanding how big and how great God is, and let that have an impact on our lives. God wants us to see the greatness that He carries and who He is. We all have areas of low thinking in ourselves, right? Those areas where we self-reject, we shame, we self-hate. We're learning to heal through those, to see ourselves the way that God sees us, right? We're learning how to have a greater value and worth for who we are as sons and daughters. We want to manifest the greatness of God in and through our lives. But the greatness of God actually manifests in very simple everyday life. But when grandiosity gets into play, it creates a distorted picture, a distorted extreme, where it takes healthy concepts of kingdom living and it can drive them into unhealthy places, unbalanced places, and very dysfunctional relating patterns. Grandiosity in itself is not authentic. It's not vulnerable. It's a grossly exaggerated picture. It's a projected image. Now, narcissists carry a grandiosity. They can have this projected high view of themselves and project a great sense of confidence. Or someone who is called a vulnerable narcissist can create a big picture of being the biggest victim. It's the largest and greatest, but in getting the short end of the stick. So you can have those patterns happen in both ways. I'll get to that in just a moment. But all of this is an act to protect themselves from the emptiness and shame that they carry, that they are not dealing with, they're not even admitting to. So grandiosity creates patterns of illusions, or rather delusions of grandeur, where one develops an extreme sense of importance. Goes back to the me, everything focused back on me. I personally, and my goal today in sharing this, is I see the need for many to heal from being in a relationship with a narcissist, being raised by one, working with one, being married to one, etc. And that's going to take time, as I share today. I also want to bring an exhortation to us as believers to be aware of the cultural influence of grandiosity and the effect that it can have on our families, our businesses, our communities, and churches. So let's talk about grandiosity's influence. I'm going to lay out some things that it will do. First and foremost, it creates an exaggerated communication of accomplishments, relationships, and status. It could go into wealth and money and more. Keep in mind the grandiose narcissist and the vulnerable narcissist. I'm going to get into the vulnerable narcissist in just a second. But the typical grandiose narcissist, everything is great. They're always inflating who they think they are or what they've done. They're bringing all the attention back to themselves, and they're highly exaggerating accomplishments. Now, I can't help but think as I'm sharing this, if this gets into the church life, then it gets into sermons and testimonies and vision casting. This can get really messy and yucky pretty quick. But this here is one of the big areas: exaggerated communication about accomplishments, relationship, and status. Now, it can also go the flip side, and I got to explain this because when I talk about victimhood, a narcissist will either A, be someone who relates out of victimhood. They're just always the biggest victim. Everything's negative, and they're just pulling you into the tractor beam of that. That's often called a covert narcissist or a vulnerable narcissist. It's very deadly, very toxic to relationships, especially if that's a parent, because it just creates a very dysfunctional dynamic to the children. But grandiose or typical narcissists, as we think of them, they often go into spirals. Narcs are always crashing. They crash behind the scenes. They won't crash in public. They crash behind the scenes because they go into this woe is me because they're burnt out. Things aren't working. So they start spiraling into victimhood, and they go as deep as they can. They become debilitatingly negative. So they either live their lifestyle of communicating constant victimhood, or they're in this up, everything's great, and they're crashing, going back and forth. It can almost appear as though these are bipolar tendencies that they're going into, manic highs combined with very deep depressive lows. So this is something important to understand when relating, as you're going to see this grandiosity effect as I continue to share this. The third thing is this thing called love bombing. This is especially in the beginning of the relationship, a constant over-the-top expression of flattery, compliments, maybe even gifts. Right when the relationship is new, they create this pattern in how they meet people. Everything's wonderful, and they lay out these stories, and everything is just great, and they want you to think how wonderful and awesome it is. You may go on a date with someone like this, or you may get to know someone in church like this. They come in hard and fast and strong, and they want to really bring that message out. I've always felt in pastoral ministry, especially when people jump in too strong, it's always a flag. It doesn't mean they're necessarily a narcissist. It means we're jumping really fast into something. You're wanting to get married and we haven't had our first date yet, so to speak, to use that analogy. Relationships take time. But the church can often be an attraction because churches need volunteers. They need people. They need leaders, right? And so it's very easy for narcs to come creeping in because they come in strong and they bring this intense love bombing. Everything's amazing. Now, at its core, love bombing is immature. It's immaturity. When you meet someone, there's gradual progression. When you meet someone, yes, honoring, respectful. How are you doing? Nice to meet you. I've heard wonderful things about you. You've been a blessing to my life, or whatever. Introductions, there's, but it's not healthy, and how many times relationships want to go too strong, too fast. We have to let relationships take their time. But with that aside, narcs they love bomb their new relationships until a couple things happen. You start to get to know them, and you're like, whoa, this is toxic. And now you're spun in their orbit and feeding their supply. They want to get you to feed their supply, the shell that they've presented. They want you to feed that. Then there's a stage 2 where many narcissists, they come in love bombing. But then as the relationship gets close and maybe you see some of their flaws, they're going to find a way to disqualify you. They're going to find a way to shove you off, to shove you aside. They will shut down this relationship because narcs can't have long-term, meaningful, close relationships. They can't, because that requires vulnerability. It requires humility. It requires, at times, revealing yourself less than others, in the sense of not less than in like self-rejecting, but just humility. You're looking out for others, and you're not trying to come across as though you're better than others or further along than others. The fourth thing is they can project that they have a unique relationship with God that no one else has. Now, if this gets into someone who's a pastor, a teacher, an entrepreneur, a business person, it gets into people that have, they present like they have special gifting or a special inside track. This can be very concerning because they can often run organizations or churches or businesses that become very cult-like, very controlling, and very, very dangerous to the emotions and mental health of people. This is extremely toxic. Fifth thing is an obsessive focus on image, wealth, power, status. They seem to talk about that a lot. And now, if you're a vulnerable narcissist, you're going to talk about that in ways you're never good enough and never good, and nothing happens to you. But vulnerable narcissists take their victimhood and they hold it up as a trophy. They hold it up as like, nobody's known the trouble I've seen. Nobody's known my sorrows. You know, they have nobody but Jesus knows how bad I've had it, right? Because that's the way that they relate, because they don't want to go, oh, I got to deal with myself. I got to make some new decisions. I got to have some new perspectives. I got to work on myself. That victimhood becomes actually a form of pride, where it's like, I can't move forward because I've done everything. And no one understands. And that's why I can't catch a break. I am the top of the list of those who've tried. And of course, we all have to deal with victim thinking, self-pity. It doesn't mean you're a narc, but bringing this into the understanding of this grandiosity that comes into play. But typically, there's this admiration. We're paying attention to image, wealth, power, and status. People that live a grounded life, it's like, it's a big deal. You have a lot of money, that's great. That's all. You have a great business. You got a big church. I learned early on at many pastoral networking gatherings, it was all about who's who and who has the big thing and the big church, the big building, the big finances, and if you walked in there, I remember my early days going to pastoral events. I would just write my first name. I wouldn't write like, Reverend Mark. I just write Mark. What's your name? Hi, I'm Reverend so and so. And it's like, really? Is that what you want everyone? Does your wife call you that? It's like they look like they wore their suits, to bed at night. It's just 24/7 uniforms. I'm kidding around, but it's like there is this aspect culturally where we like to look at the image status portfolio as our primary way of relating to people, instead of just getting to know each other as human beings, as men and women, and just being able to get to know heart and relationship, right? Narcs don't have any time for that, because this is their focus. They're making headway in their status and their connection. So there's this feeling in a special sense that is far above others. They might be the greatest victor or the greatest victim. No one understands how special they are. And within that, there's a sense of superiority. And either greatest or worse. And either way, they will put down others. So even a narcissist could be an addict, for example, and be homeless, maybe living on the streets, and will look at other people and look down on them. It doesn't matter where you are in your state. There's a lack of self-awareness. And when we walk in humility, there's this ability to self-discern. Are you able to see yourself the way you need to? If you want to see yourself soberly, then humility is a pathway to that, because you can begin to see things as they are, and in balance over time, you become more self-aware, and that gives you room for growth. But grandiosity has a lot of dangers to it, and I want to lay those out here. One of the things is that it keeps us in an unrealistic world. A narcissist is going to live in an unrealistic world that they live in, the story they live by. And the second thing is you lose a sense of groundedness and balance, because you're always chasing these highs and lows. It also prevents sobriety. And I'm a big believer in encouraging believers to live in emotional sobriety, which means you see things as they are. Not worse than they are, despairing and not denying. We see it for what it is, so then we can process and move forward in our lives. But this grandiosity, it brainwashes the perspectives of those around. So if it's a parent, then it's going to have a brainwashing effect on the kids, on the family. If it's a boss, on the people in the workplace. If it's a pastor, people in the church. It distorts, because they're constantly crafting a storyline. And I'll get into gaslighting in the next one, because there's this hypnotic kind of spell that gets put on people. But number 5 here is that you can't learn new things. Narcissists don't learn what they need to learn because it prevents them, grandiosity prevents them from learning and listening because they have the greatest thing and they have the awesomest thing going on. So they don't really sit and listen to you and ask you and actually position themselves to learn from you. I have a few more that are important to bring out. Number 6, it's unappealing to those who get close. This grandiosity, after a while you go, okay, big deal. This is amazing. How about just normal life? So people won't stick around for long, especially healthy people. They're not going to stick around for this. It's also shallow. Grandiosity is very shallow in how we communicate things. It's very difficult to live in grandiosity and have depth, because depth slows down. Depth takes time. Depth embraces weaknesses, flaws, the struggle, the humanity, the realness of what we're going through, what we're learning. So because it's shallow, narcs don't develop meaningful, close, long-term relationships. They have a hard time keeping marriages. They have a hard time. They may run churches, but look at those close to them. So if it's a pastor, I want to see his wife. How's she doing, right? How are the kids doing? I don't care about this, all these thousands of people. I know that the media does, and people on social media and the crowd seem to. I want to look relationally. Where's the value here for close relationships? How do they treat the people around them, right? A big concern is that it feeds an addict lifestyle, and many where there's churches or businesses, it feeds this like intensity. Everything's got to be big and amazing because we got to have these like pep rally kind of momentum, and creates that kind of culture, this intense culture. And it hooks on to the addict lifestyles of people in the culture. So if you're creating grandiosity in your business, then it's going to pull in a lot of the addicts, and they're going to live that chasing the rush, chasing dopamine rather. And it can also kind of feed this entitlement thing. The mental health concern here, besides addiction and many other things, is that it feeds mania. Now, mania is a term used in psychology. It's often applied to like bipolar, where it speaks of periods of abnormally, where your mood is very elevated, energy increases abnormally, high energy, high activity, so energized that it's a major change, major shift. For some people, this can be very, very intense if they truly have mood disorders like bipolar. Other people notice it around you. And this grandiosity, I sometimes wonder, in the church, are we feeding manic lifestyles in people? By the rush, and God's made it's got to be, everything's got to be up here. And we don't teach people in the church how to be here in the quiet. One of the top symptoms that Christians can't do today is sit still, especially Christians in the West, because Western Christianity is built around get up, go, serve. Love God, love people, love God. God, I love you. I gotta go do. That's Western Christianity, a big facet of it. So, devotional life, quiet time, so to speak, is that thing you check off on the list because you don't want to make God upset. It's performance driven. There's no slow, there's no space. It's do, perform. So in many ways we can are we feeding this kind of manic intensity? It's got to be up here because this is where God's at, and you got to be involved and be in this way, and taking a break, taking time off. No. God doesn't take a time off. Is God taking a vacation? Is God? It's intensity, right? That's one of the things I had to begin to detox from, because I saw it in my pastoring life and saw it in certain areas of how I did ministry. It's got to be up here, or it's not great, or God's not pleased with it. It's dysfunctional. So therefore, it keeps you blind to the issues that you need to address because there's no room and space. You're serving grandiosity. It keeps drawing people to look at you, to bring the attention to you, because you feed this cycle. Whether it's a pastor with this church, parent with children, in a very dysfunctional way, they're looking at you in this persona you've created to keep the focus back to you. It feeds a lifestyle where you're staring at yourself so unproductively, and it communicates a false message to others. It communicates a false message to people about who you are. It diminishes the people around you, their connection with unconditional love. Because it's like grandiose gets attention. Yeah, whatever's high and up there, that's what gets attention. You have to, you develop a never enough mindset, perfectionism. And you have to be an amazing standout person with great accomplishments, or you're not going to be loved. This is horrific. It's awful when a child is being raised by this. And so when you, like, for example, if you're raised by a narcissist, you will have to absolutely wow them to get any attention at all. And then it's never good enough. And then they still find a way to bring it back to themselves. And this thing about this intensity that everything's got to be up here, and this adrenaline kind of culture, and it's not just exclusively in very expressive environments like a Pentecostal environment. I could see this in any kind of denomination, in any stream, in this constant, we got to be productive, big vision, all this stuff way up here. So I got to pause for a minute in this talk, because I need like a moment for us to just think for a second. Is the church feeding grandiosity? Are we can look at people and this person and that person, they're narcissists, they're dysfunctional, this and that. But do we as a culture applaud and feed and want grandiosity? And do we teach it to other people? Has the message of a big God, limitless and all powerful, been processed down in day-to-day life that it's got to be this, or it's nothing at all? I wonder if narcissism has had an influence in the leadership message and how we talk to people and what we have come into agreement with and what our day-to-day life looks like as a family, as a business, as a church. Are we as a church encouraging manic highs where our gatherings have to be pep rallies, where your walk with God has to be super duper amazing all the way up here? Otherwise, there's something wrong. Means you're not following God good enough, that your spiritual life is problematic because you don't feel certain things or have certain things manifesting in your thoughts and life. Something's deeply wrong and you got to get in that place. I sometimes wonder, these are more questions to ponder, but I sometimes wonder, is the church feeding a grandiose mindset by our big God, everything big? I was taught a lot at conferences, think bigger. And I'd have a plan of action. It's like, no, think bigger, more money, bigger. And at times it was driving me crazy. Are we getting to the point where if it's not huge numbers, huge crowds, huge finances, if it's not super popular, it's not significant? So if you have a church that has a small numbers, but you have meaningful depth relationships, that's not of God. That's not something God's blessing, which in my opinion, people need that more than anything right now, more than any big crowd or any fancy. We actually need intimacy and connection. We need meaningful connection more than ever before. It's like our largeness and bigness is burning people out. I mean, I interact with people on a weekly basis whose mental health, relationships, marriages, families are eroding because of this go after big and constant striving lifestyle that they can't seem to get out of it. Does it teach us that raising your kids and living a simple life is not significant? That's not following God? I have many I've talked to who are under the influence of depression because they think they miss God because their life seems ordinary and not grandiose. Is the church feeding a grandiose sense of self? We hear this over and over again where individuals, I see it all the time coming to me, I am going to the nations, I am changing the world. It's like if everybody is going out, starting their own organizations and changing the world, there's no organizations. There's just a bunch of individuals going out. Very rarely do I hear someone say, I just feel really called to raise my family and put my attention there. Or I feel called to support this local church and just work with the team there. And not big, it's not flashy, might even be behind the scenes, but you don't see that a lot. It's I, me. I'm starting a new organization. I'm starting this thing. No one wants to work with anyone. No one. There's a lot of beautiful things in life, but they aren't flashy on Instagram. They're not flashy on media outlets, because a lot of what God does, and it's very powerful, is in the ordinary day to day. The God of the universe, who is grand and massive, shows himself in everyday life as we learn to love our neighbor as ourselves. You can't truly love people, though, in grandiosity. You perform love. Oh, you have these beautiful moments with music and the video clips, and it looks amazing. You have a presentation that may move people. I'm not saying those things. A presentation is wrong. But where the beauty is the day-to-day messiness of learning to love in your home and raise your children. I feel in these days like never before, my role in raising my children as a father is the most important role of ministry, besides ministering to my wife, that I can see in the world, on the planet. We've lived for decades, though, that know the crowd is the big priority, the mission. And yet that which is important, which will change generations, is being neglected in this grandiose chasing. Is the church at times feeding grandiose exaggeration, where our testimonies and stories get exaggerated? I know when I watch a stand-up comedian, their stories, as they tell them, we know they're not carbon copied the way they had them. They add things, they tailor it to make it funny, to make the presentation, but it comes across like it happened exactly in that way. They change names, they might change the situation, right? They're telling you a story, putting themselves in it. Do we sometimes do that in our testimony and sharing, exaggerating things? Do we exaggerate a grandiose vision? Everything's got to be big crowds, big money, big buildings, big budgets, and do we step back and go, is this really what God wants? Is God calling us to sacrifice our marriages and our children and our relationships, our mental health for the sake of this? Because this is what happens. And we look at these, do we look at these large things and realize that we could just kind of slice open with a knife, and if we were to dissect it, there's nothing in there, there's no depth there? These are just questions I'm asking myself as I'm looking at the effect of healing from narcissists, a relationship with narcissists, and my own healing journey and those I'm helping. I kind of wonder, are we feeding into this? Do we feel the need that we got to constantly motivate people, pep them up, to manipulate stories, and then live for grandiose results? Through my journey of healing from perfectionism, I had to deal with this all or nothing kind of mentality, this intense, pressurized, you could at times call it grandiosity, where it had to be this amazing, over-the-top sermon, or it was a failure. That could be very anxiety inducing, as well as depressive. I remember as a youth pastor in my early days, Thursday morning, which would follow Wednesday night, those were our gatherings, my whole identity and everything was stocked into Wednesday nights. They needed to be amazing events and gatherings, and Thursday morning were mornings of depression because nothing was ever good enough. What saddens my heart is that no one sat me down to say that that's not what we're serving. No one ever told me, hey, appreciate the ordinary days. Don't get lost in chasing all those big achievements. That's not who you are. If it happens, it's awesome. It's great. No one. I had to crash. I had to manifest severe OCD, chronic anxiety, and regular panic attacks, debilitating depression, to even come to realize I'd been serving something that's shallow. Church, what are we teaching our people? Are we constantly living under the pressure to keep making things happen, We're creating busybodies, and we're just stamping God on everything. This is great. This is wonderful. Meanwhile, people are burnt out. They're tired, weary. We're not connecting to the heart of what people are working through. We're just funneling them through a machine. What are we teaching our kids in our homes, that if they don't do something amazing, they won't get our love and attention? So children have to constantly shoot high just to be seen? Are we teaching our children to be like the online influencers out there, where you've got to look this way, sound this way, everything's got to be over the top amazing? And we know somewhere in our thinking that what influencers are showing on social media is not real. We get hypnotized by it anyway, and it forms our culture and how we relate. You see, grandiosity isn't just about the narcissist. It's also about culture. Because when I think about grandiosity and its effect on our lives and our culture, grandiosity is prevented, it is healed through parenting, fathering, and mothering, where love is given in a healthy way, where you are shown you are loved for who you are and where you are. You are shown and demonstrated loving bond and connection. You are shown that you are amazing and filled with so much potential. And you also learn the world doesn't revolve around you. And it's not all about you. And love is a flow received from God, processed through yourself, and given out. That love is not a feedback loop that starts making noise, where just as this microphone brings a signal to you, stuck in itself, it will produce a feedback signal that's not an attractive sound. Where we love our kids unconditionally, but they also know, hey, the world doesn't revolve around you. Let the love you have flow out. Have your head up. Look out. Let love flow through you and out. But you don't have to be under pressure to try and please and make all this stuff happen. The Lord's burden is easy. The Lord's burden is light. I am in the business of taking the yokes off of your life. That's my heart, is to remove burdens you do not have to carry. And grandiosity leaves you with a burden of life that needs restructuring. So what do we do? How do we begin to heal through this? Well, one of the areas I would want to bring out in ways that we can heal is we got to all humble ourselves and say, listen, God, I humble myself under your mighty hand, because you'll lift us up. You'll exalt. He says he'll exalt you in due time. He's going to put you on display. Isn't that amazing? But he does it through the humility process, because he builds you up. He becomes your source. There's things in your life you begin to learn. Humility is such a beautiful, beautiful currency in the kingdom of God. And we do that by being teachable. Hey, you cut through narcissistic culture right there. Just being teachable. I don't know. There's a lot I don't know. I want to learn. To being correctable. Woo! Now we're really, right? We're in your meaningful relationships. You can hear critique, and you can take in things, and you can make course corrections. You see yourself soberly now, right? You're not denying and living in a false presentation. You're also not beating yourself up all day. That's not humility. Self-rejecting is not humility. The second thing is that we all have to relearn what it means to be loved, because grandiosity teaches you you're only going to be loved by the results you bring in life. And if you don't bring the goods, then you're sunk. It's a lie. I'm loved not by the results that I bring in life. I'm loved right now by my Father in heaven, right now, here in this moment. Not because of what I did, but because of how he sees me and what he has done. And I'm learning to receive and embrace the beauty of that unconditional love that takes me in, that patiently walks with me, kindly and compassionately interacts with me, His love brings about transformative work. My life is changed because in that love, the truth is revealed, and the truth sets me free. It aligns me. It grounds me. The third thing is that I found in my journey and in helping others, we have to set a new standard of what we're going to value. Because we, as the people of God, if we keep foaming at the mouth and drooling over grandiosity and chasing it, we will keep this machine going. But if we value relationships, the value is not just results. The value is I care about you. And I make time for you. I make time to live a little slower. So whether you meet the President of the United States or you meet someone who is serving a table at a restaurant you're working at, you have honor and respect for who they are. See, here's the thing about narcissists, by the way. You can tell by how they treat people in their status alignment. So they see someone serving their table, you'll see the narc come out and how they treat them versus how they might treat someone who's a president or a CEO of a company, right? You can tell a lot by people, by how they treat people that don't have anything to offer them back. You could tell a lot about a person. So when we set a new standard for what we value, we're going to value relationship, authentic relationship. Oh, so you make that much money? Oh, that's nice. Good for you. How's life? Right? We're going to change our metrics and what we're chasing as a core. I'm not against making money, having successful businesses, or any of that. But what's the core of what we go after, of what we're looking for, of what impresses us? What changed my life, it's helped me so much, just in a lot of areas. Number 4 is appreciating the normalcy of life. I don't even know if that's a word. I didn't even check to see if that's a word. Normalcy. Normalcy. That gives me normality. Not even sure normalcy. Is it correct to say normalcy? In the United States, normality or normalcy is acceptable. The condition of being normal, being usual, typical, or expected. What has helped me is to appreciate the simplicity of life, to appreciate the moments that are not over the top. Work days that are not over the top. Church gatherings are not over the top. Interactions that are not over the top. Slow growth instead of explosive growth. For many of you, if you were to follow me around in my life, my day-to-day and my journey might seem boring to many of you who follow grandiosity because you need the constant high of the achievements, or you need the drama or the constant stimulation. Without that, you don't know what to do. But I find this to be a great piece of mental health stability. It's just appreciating the quiet, the slow, the nothingness. Don't rush on to the next thing. Don't jump to the next thing. Let's take our time. It's nurturing. It's powerful. Meaningful interactions. You don't have to be like, oh, it was so up here. It was, I'm concerned in this generation about the buzz of energy, the manic energy, the inability to focus, have attention. We're so stimulated, and we need that. And when there isn't, we got to fill it in. So if we're sitting down and there's a lull, we grab our phones. We always have to have something going on. Instead of just learning to just sit and just be. Some of you, the most spiritual thing you could do is probably just sit on your front porch in a rocking chair and just sit. Not with your phone, a tablet, a TV. Just sit. Just be still and know. Now, in walking healthier patterns, I'm going to tell you number 5, this is a big one. Welcome relationships that keep you grounded. That you not trying to, they're just impressed with you. They just love you, but they are able to speak truth, and you're able to appreciate that. Because this is how our mental health gets changed. 6 is we're going to need to challenge thoughts of comparison. Comparison's a thief. It's very, very damaging to our mental health. And many narcs live off of comparison. And just because you struggle with comparison doesn't mean you're a narcissist again. But comparison is a joy thief and it's a sanity thief. It's a joy thief because nothing's ever good enough. It's always, pulling the rug out from under you. And then if you're comparing yourself as better than other ones, it's stealing sanity of sobriety of how you see yourself. Beware of performance-driven Christianity, number 7. It's important to keep in mind because performance feeds this. Achievement. Go, go, go. Busy, busy, busy. As you know, if you've been around my materials for any length of time, I have my problems with performance-driven Christianity, which is a modern plague today, and it's robbing many of their mental, emotional, and relationship health. I want to also encourage you, too, to beware of the influence of perfectionism, because it will constantly want to come around just right, but never enough. Just right, never enough. And we're entangling ourselves from that, getting free from this. Now, number 9 is a very strong statement. Divorce yourself from the concept that if you are not showing something, quote unquote, big and awesome, you are not doing something great for God. Many people walk out of church meetings or business gatherings spinning because they're like, I don't have that big thing to show. So therefore, God's not doing something in my life. Let's just sign divorce papers with that kind of mindset and unglue ourselves from that. And instead, what I want to encourage in your journey is a lifestyle of simplicity and slow. We're walking out of grandiosity. We're going to see the beauty in walking with God in the cool of the day. We're going to see the beauty in just step by step. We're going to see the beauty in the moments with our spouse, with our children, with those we have the opportunity to bless, with the mailman that's walking by, with the people that live near us, with the people that are in our sphere, those around us, that work for us or work with us, that most of all, beyond productivity, I'd see the beauty of just the real you walking with God. I'm going to give you one of the scriptures that has been a guiding premise over the past few years. And you might be surprised because I don't know that I see these scriptures necessarily put in big plaques and put in impressive places. It's not one of those super impressive ones, but it takes us to 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. On the screen, the print's a little small, but I think it'll be big enough for you to read it. If not, you can get your Bible out and look it up yourself. 1 Thessalonians 4, 9 through 12. Paul says this. There's amazing statements here. But concerning brotherly love, you have no need that I should write to you. For you yourselves are taught by God to love one another. Paul says, I don't even need to write to you to talk to you about love. God is teaching you direct. How do I know? Because I see the love that you have for each other. That's simple, grounded living. So then he says, and indeed you do so toward all the brethren who are in Macedonia. But we urge you, brethren, that you increase more and more. There's expansion here, right? And all the grandiose people, they go, here we go, big vision, big God, here we go, right? We're going to ramp this up. Here it is. Increase more in what? Aspire to live a quiet life. Wait, what? Quiet? I need to be seen. I got to post today. I got to share. I got to Insta story. I got to make stuff happen. Oh, wait, what? Aspire to lead a quiet life. When was the last time you heard a teaching on, hey, I want to encourage you all today, teach you and equip you to grow and expand in loving people and live a quiet life? That just gets crickets today. No appeal to that. There's no crowd's going to gather around that. Live a quiet life. Mind your own business. Oh, narcs can't do that. A lot of people can't do that. We get in the drama constantly, right? When we mind our own business, we learn to settle and we pay attention to what's important. We don't get lost in the drama of life. We don't get lost in the constant news and this is happening, this is happening. It just distracts us from ourselves and what's important anyway. So love people, live a quiet life, mind your own business, and work with your hands. So basically being diligent with what's in front of you, your job, and see the significance in that. And don't let grandiosity give you a counterfeit message that doesn't see the value of who you are and where you are. I pray this message was a blessing to your life and your journey. If it was, and there's a lot of heartfelt stuff here, I took my time in this today. If you like this, would you click like, click subscribe, come over to markdejesus.com, where I like to send out weekly email letters. I share a little bit extra that I only write to the email community. You can also, if you like to take further steps in your healing journey, I don't have that slide right now. I'll have to put that slide up. I have, here we go. If you go to markdejesus.com, click on the community button there up top. You can join the Healing and Freedom community. This is an invested journey where you're wanting to interact with others, get support, and be able to have some of your questions answered and addressed as you're navigating the healing and freedom journey. Take advantage of that. If you want to walk a more meaningful, healed, and free life, then get a copy of the Heart Healing Journey. So be a great next step in navigating through what it means to have a more meaningful awakening in the healing and transformative work of God in your life. If this broadcast meant a lot to you, would you take a moment, go to markdejesus.com, click on that donate button, support us with a one-time donation, or become a regular supporter of the ministry materials because they are supported by donations. Thank you so much. Again, this is your brother from another mother saying, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. I'll be back with more insights for your healing and freedom journey. But in the meantime, I'm out.